Hey, what's up, everybody? It's BDF44 coming at you with another video. Okay, so as I said, I wanted to do, I want to touch on every single team, break down each and every roster I can. I've gotten through a few of them, let's say about 5 or 6 of them thus far, and I have another one here for you right now. I've written down each and every player on the roster, and I'll talk about what I understand about these players, which is limited to some degree because I don't really watch everybody that much. But yeah, this is the Clippers. We're talking about the Clippers today. Excuse me. So this is what we got going on. First name, of course, when you're talking about the LA Clippers, is Kawhi Leonard, and we all know who Kawhi Leonard is. One of the best two-way players of the generation, two-time Finals MVP, many-time All-Star, and somebody who's had a lot of issues injury-wise. And the reputation of the individual is that he tends to take his time when his injuries are, lengthy. And so right now he's dealing with a lengthy injury toward his knee, and he's going to be out for an indefinite amount of time, which means the speculation is that he will probably miss the entire season coming up here. So, the Kawhi Leonard situation is, although starting off rocky with this contract, it is intact because he did sign a 4-year deal and extended himself. So he will be with the Clippers for the foreseeable future, and they will be paying for his salary this year. So that's just what's going on. The Clippers don't have a whole lot of assets because it cost them about 4 picks to get the next guy on our list by the name of Paul George. We know also he's a perennial all-star, two-way player, once again, small forward. Similar, same position as Kawhi Leonard, but they can play many positions, so that's neither here nor there. And of course, Paul George is coming off a really good year. He's had his issues as far as reputation of being somebody who falls asleep, so to speak, in the playoffs. But he's had a good playoffs in this past run. He looked really good with the Clippers. And without Kawhi Leonard, he got them all the way through the Western Conference Finals to the sixth game, I believe. And, they, as a team, as a collection of players, the Clippers really did a great job in the playoffs and showed us why their coach is one of the best coaches in all of basketball right now, Ty Lue. That's what I saw. So, yeah, that was a good showing for PG. Next man up, Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann is a player who's on the verge of breaking out. Also a player who plays that position as well. He will all those positions as well. Shooting guard, preferably, I believe, but he can play some 3, he can play some 1. And he's a guy who's aggressive. A guy with big playability, big scoring ability, some defensive presence, and just a player with the all-around attribute of game that he can kind of work up to all-star status, in my opinion. This is somebody who is yet to be paid, still on a rookie contract, so he is one of their most valuable pieces, if not their very most valuable piece right now, outside of course, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, because of the price that he's on and because of what he provides and because of what his projection is to be over the next several years. So, their prized possession, as far as I'm concerned, is Terrence Mann. The next player that we're going to mention here, the guy they just picked up. They just picked him up from the Memphis Grizzlies, trading away Rondo and Patrick Beverly, who are now in LA and Minnesota respectively. But as a result, they also receive a guy, Eric Bledsoe, in his contract, which is at, I think, 2 more years left. They owe him 17 this year, and I think 3.9 next year. And he's going to be their starting point guard, as far as I can see here, unless they give it to Reggie Jackson. It's between those players. But Eric Bledsoe was a guy who's going to be returning to the Clippers, someone who had a very good tenure there, a good rookie season there, and earned himself quite a bit of value in trade, leaving the Clippers as their backup point guard behind Chris Paul. Everybody knew that Eric Bledsoe at the time should be receiving a starting nod, but if the Clippers were to keep him at that role, they would be so much better because he was such a dynamic player coming off the bench. A lot of us believe they should have paid him back then, and I think his career would have been much better in that role, honestly, than the roles that he's had jumping across the league. If he would have stayed in that position right behind Chris Paul and flourished from there, you're looking at a Marcus Smart situation, but basically he probably develops with more success than I think Marcus has been able to receive, because he would have been playing behind Chris Paul for all of that time. But that was a very, very serious investment for the Clippers to have had to make to try to pay their backup guard all the money that he was going to be asking for. So I understood letting him go. But yeah, he's back with the Clippers. Very different circumstances. The Clippers are bringing in a guy who's struggling. This is a different Bledsoe. He's coming off a year where he didn't look as good last year, and you know the running thing is that the previous year, even before that, he was with Milwaukee. They didn't play that great because he was their starting point guard, and then when he left, they replaced him with Drew Holiday, and of course they won the championship last year. So that's one thing that works against Eric as well, given the fact that people just perceive things a certain way. But all in all, this is a situation where he's needed. He's going to be asked to play the starting point guard, I believe, again, or that backup role. But it's hard to tell with these two players that they are going to have to kind of battle it out. But he'll be needed this year. This is going to be a year where he's going to be needed probably more than maybe really ever. This team, he's going to be one of the main pieces on this squad. And in that role, I actually don't hate it for this particular team, because there's no expectations. They're not playing for a championship this year, unfortunately. Without Kawhi Leonard, there's just nothing to really say. They don't have their picks, so it's not like they could tank. You know what I mean? They just have to run out there and do the best they can, which means a guy like Eric Bledsoe can go out there and have a big year off the strength of the fact of their circumstances. They're just going to need everybody to play well, even though there's not a whole lot there's not a whole lot to look up at in terms of what they can accomplish this season. It's just like we'll make it the playoffs, hopefully, and be pleased with where we go, or we'll miss the playoffs and just get ready for next season. That's kind of the circumstances with this squad. So since we've been mentioning Reggie Jackson, of course, he should be the next name up. He was a guy who played great in the Western Conference Finals. And kind of shook off some bad juju about his name in regards to him not living up to who he's supposed to be in this league after having a great tenure with OKC and then going to Detroit and just kind of getting lost in the fold. But Reggie Jackson is now with the LA Clippers. They re-signed him this offseason, and I'm pretty sure they are happy to have him because he looked great, and I mean absolutely great in these playoffs. So yeah, that's the next guy. Marcus Morris is who we're talking about next up. They have him locked up for the next 3 years. Obviously, he's a Morris twin. The Lakers know his brother because he won a championship with his bro. And Marcus is the better shooter of the two. He's a three-point shooter, somebody that's really, really reliable. I think he made his name with both Boston and New York as a fantastic three-point shooter. And has found his way to the Clippers. In my opinion, severely overpaid for what it is that they're dealing with, for who they are as a team. They need his value to be spread out between more players, in my opinion. It's not that his contract is something that he can't play up in a better situation, but at value for what they are, they just need more. And because they have their cap wrapped up in PG and Kawhi Leonard, and then have Terrence Mann and other players that we're going to mention, it's kind of ridiculous that they have him at that position as well, making so much of a portion of their cap. But that's how they've maneuvered this team. That's how they've structured their team. So Marcus Morris is going to be down there at $64 million for 4 years, and I think this is going to be year 2 of that 4-year deal. So that's just one of the contracts that kind of have them stranglehold, because you can't trade him for someone else who's at that price. No one's going to do that. He's quite frankly going to be considered someone not worth that contract. So they're kind of stuck. They're stranglehold. He's one of the reasons why they're not going to be able to get a guy like Ben Simmons. Now, if he would have been a player of a different cachet or a better player, so to speak, they would be in the mix to be able to get some guys. But because he's one of those contracts that you look at and say, nah, I'm not taking that, they're kind of out on everybody. So not to single out Marcus Morris, because he's not the only contract on this roster like that, but his is one of the ones that you look at and you say they can't be players in trades. So it is what it is. Sergio Bacca is the next name we're going to mention. He's coming off injury. Serge is a guy who I think can do a lot for you. I like the fact that once he stopped being the shot blocking specialist, when his body wasn't really blocking shots to that degree, he turned himself into one of the better mid-range and three-point shooters at the 4 spot. So he's kind of a guy who's kind of turned his game into something else. And I like it. I like it because even though he's not the best defender he used to be, he's still a competent enough defender to help. and most importantly, that shot is wet. He's a really really good player. So it's one of those situations where if you get really good, a really good Serge Ibaka, you got practically an all-star. He's a very consistent shooter. That's what I like about Serge at this stage in his career. If I can't expect nothing else from him, I know he's going to hit that jumper for me. So I like Serge. I just don't know where he is in his conditioning at this stage. I don't know, if they're going to be relying upon him to be old Serge Ibaka. It looks like by looking at this roster, he's going to have a big role this year, a very big role. So, hopefully he comes in healthy, and if that's the case, they're going to be very, very excited to have him down there because he's going to have a productive year. I think this could be one of the more productive years in his career just simply because of the lack of talent on this roster right now. He's going to be required to have one. Luke Canard is another name. There's another guy. I didn't look at his contract, so I don't know where they are with that. I know they re-signed him, but I don't remember at what rate. But he's another guy who doesn't hold value, unfortunately, to measure up to his contract. Now, let's say if he and Marcus Morris were, again, playing better or had a better cachet or what to their name, they could be players to get some other guys. But because of another name like that, Luke Kennard, who hasn't really turned into it, who we want him to be at that contract level, again, not players in trades. So Luke Kennard's a nice player, though. I've seen him play good ball, especially during his Detroit Piston days, his third year in Detroit. Right before he went to the Clippers, I think it was. He started showing why he was somebody they drafted so high. He could score the ball. He has nice footwork. He can dart in and out between the three-point line and the mid-range area and hit those shots very, very consistently, catch and shoot in situations like that. I've seen him do those things. So he's an aggressive player. He has some pop to his game. He just has not developed. I don't know why. I'm not going to assume. But at this point, he's just not developing in the Clippers uniform just yet. And part of that is because they haven't had the role for him. Again, you look up PG and Kawhi. These guys are ball handlers. These guys are shoot-first players. These guys are guards and forwards. And if you look at most of the names that I just named, if not all the names I just named, they're either guards or small forwards. Even Serge Bacca at this stage is a power forward who's shooting jumpers. It's like Canard is a guy who needs somebody to get him to rock. And as you can see, none of the names I've named, with the exception of maybe Reggie Jackson, is going to be accused with making others better in terms of passing the rock and doing all this facilitation and stuff like that. So what you have is guys like Marcus Morris you aren't getting the most out of Marcus Morris. You aren't getting the most out of Luke Kennard because there's no point guard or facilitator, to be more exact, to make sure that they're getting the ball in their spots. So you have useless pieces, right, at useless price levels because you can't use them, not because they're not good. It's Clipper problems. These are basketball issues. You got to get facilitators on the floor. This is why I always say this. They are one of the main teams in this league that has that problem. And what's consistent about teams like that? Useless players on the roster. Usually a bunch of catch and shoot guys who need somebody to pass it to them. So this is what you have here. Yet another one. That's Luke Kennard, Serge Ibaka, Marcus Morris. All those guys fit in that category. Zubac's another player who needs people to get him the ball. He's a center, obviously a talented one. The worst trade in NBA history involved his name. The Lakers were so desperate to get rid of Michael Beasley in a situation where maybe something happened. I don't know what happened, to be honest with you, but they were in a desperation to get rid of him. They were tired because they had failed to get AD. That's what I took from it. Fatigue was clouding people's brains. And they traded Zubac, attached with Michael Beasley, and brought back Mike Muscala, a pretty consistent shooter at this day and age, but back then was a scrub personified. We picked him up, and he did nothing for us. Zubac went on to be a very good role player for that team. Michael Beasley went on to play overseas. We could have just waived him. I don't know why we didn't. But we traded him instead in that very, very lopsided trade, and as a result, Ivica Zubac is the starting center of the LA Clippers to this very second. Going strong, doing the same things that he did for us. Being a presence in the paint, hitting his free throws, being a steady defensive presence, albeit not so effective, unfortunately, but he does provide steady trajectory in terms of his ability to just be long and be smart in the paint, particularly going up against back to the basket defensive players. He's not going to run out there and stretch it out to the three-point line. He's not going to guard defensive players, so he is limited. Three-point players, He's not running out to the perimeter. So he is limited to certain things. He's not a fast-footed guy, things like that. But he's smart. He sets good screens. He's athletic. He's long. He's tall. And he's somebody who's going to continue to get better as he continues to work on his game. A very, very, very key attribute to his game, extremely good free throw shooter. You got a guy who's above 7 feet, and he can shoot the free throw like a guard. That's something to take very, very, very close look at. So I like Zubats, always have. Hated the fact that we traded him. We should be a Laker right now. So that's what I got for Zubats. Justice Winslow's a guy they picked up. He's had a lot of injury issues, but during the year that he was drafted, he was one of those guys that you were looking at to be a lockdown defensive player. Kind of like people were looking at guys like Scotty Barnes today and guys like Jalen Suggs today. That's how they were looking at Justice Winslow the year he was drafted. He was somebody who was a small body, but you expected him to be able to play power forward. You know, you looked at him like a future P.J. Tucker with athleticism and a lot more athleticism. But unfortunately, he got some really, really bad knee injuries early on in his career and never quite developed properly. He was in Miami a little bit, had some flashes of doing some good things, but he ended up getting drowned out by the players that they ended up acquiring on that roster because it's Miami. So if you ain't developing properly in a place like that, guys are going to be stacked on top of you over the years. You ain't going to have too many opportunities. And that's what happened to him. Ended up trading him to Memphis. That didn't work out. And he's been kind of just dealing with injuries ever since. But he lands with the Clippers this year. I'd imagine he's finally able to have a healthy offseason. And again, you look at this roster and you see opportunities for him to play. They're not going to be too heavy on their bench as it pertains to just overall talent. They got some young guys that they like, but if those guys don't really step out and do anything, I could see Justice Winslow getting some bench minutes up there with Luke Canard and people like that, and maybe he can help with some of his facilitating ability, his previous guard ability days, because he did make some plays in college. Maybe he can kind of help with that. And also a guy, the next name is going to help you with that too, Nicholas Patoon. One of the better players that they have in terms of all-around play. Probably the most important person on the roster in terms of facilitation at this point, because he's the only one that would ever be accused of doing something like that. And he has helped the team because of it. He had a very good year with the LA Clippers last year. And if I'm not mistaken, he was in the bubble as well with the Clippers that year. And he's just been good for them. And he's been really good for them. You know, he was stuck in Charlotte 2 years previous to that and just kind of gotten lost after having a fantastic tenure with Portland as their starting small forward. They have yet to replace him since. I swear to you, Portland hasn't had a small forward since this guy left, and that was like 5-6 years ago, maybe even longer than that. But Nicholas Batum went to Charlotte, signed a bunch of big deals, got paid, but got lost, and has found his way back to the Clippers, and the Clippers, have used him properly. So I expect they're going to continue to do so. Like I said, he's the guy that's going to be facilitating. That's why it would be wise to try to stick him into that starting lineup somehow, because he's the only guy that's going to be passing anybody. With respects to Reggie Jackson and Bledsoe, I just don't think nobody's looking to pass at all. Yogi Farrell's on this roster. He's a back-of-the-bench kind of guy, a guard in this league. He's been around for a very long time. He's played for Dallas and Sacramento. And, he's just a guy who comes off the bench, and just plays hard. He's not an overly gifted guard or anything like that, but he is consistent, and that's why he continues to have roles in this league. And, I've seen him play well. I've seen him hit shots. He's an offensive scoring mentality player. Has some touch, good from the line. So, if you want a role player, somebody who can come in, back of the bench player, you can do a lot worse than Yogi Farrell. I've seen him around for a long time. And the rest of the players here, to be honest with you, are just guys that they drafted recently. Brandon Boston's the guy they got in the second round. Jay Scrubb, I'm not familiar with. Keon Johnson is I believe a power forward. I think they said a slashing power forward, small forward, I think. He's the 21st pick in the draft they got this year. I have to do some homework on him, but I think he could be a rotational player for them. But again, another guy at that forward position. They just continue to triple and quadruple and down on these small forwards. And, I love what they have in terms of their coaching, because I think Ty Lue, like I said, is one of the best in the league. I wasn't big on him to start last season, but since these playoffs have arrived, I've come around to seeing everything everyone sees. He's just a fantastic coach in terms of making adjustments. He's probably the best in basketball at that right now. So if anybody can get the most out of a roster that has the same position over and 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 over again, it's him. I don't know. I'm a frustrated person when I look at stuff like this, because I'm saying that you can't get better. And I look at Kawhi and Paul George and I say, okay, that's great. You got small forwards. Why in the hell did you continue to invest in small forwards. Even the guards they have are kind of the same ilk. Even Terrence Mann, their next best up, is still that same position. It's like you can't get better. None of these guys are going to do anything other than the guy next to him. They all do the same thing, basically, and they all kind of just look for their own shot. And because of it, I don't expect Clippers to really do anything at all, period. And I'm not going to lie to you. I really believe that they should be trading Paul George for Ben Simmons for the exact reason I just mentioned. Because Ben Simmons will then be the guy who passes the rock to all of these people. Now you have Marcus Morris, who won't be useless. Luke Canard will start developing better. You'll get something out of these youngsters like Keon Johnson, all that. He's going to make those guys make sense. He's going to bring them all together. You know what I mean? But until you have that type of player, maybe Bledsoe is the answer for that, even though we've seen him play point guard. We know he's not. Reggie Jackson can be the answer for that, even though we've seen him play guard. We play point guard, and we know he's a shoot-first guy. So there's no cohesiveness on his team. There's no way for them to get better. Kawhi Leonard is their best player. He's not going to be playing at all this year. So what I see is a team that's going to have some opportunities for some guys to have some really good individual years. That's what I really do see. I think Bledsoe can have a good year. Patoon can have a good year. PG can have a MVP caliber year. Reggie Jackson can continue playing well. Marcus Morris. I mean, these guys are going to have to find somebody to facilitate the ball. But if they find that, they got pieces. They got some pieces. It's going to be a lean on Zubats to play the center position this year because they don't look like they have that backup just yet. What I see is room for them to get better, possibly add some more spots, some more roster spots. That's what I think. They need to get another center. Maybe a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein could be somebody they pick up. They could use something like that. Just one more big or two, maybe two more bigs. But, yeah, man, I don't like this roster. I ain't going to even front. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of building around the same position over and over and over again. They just, and they're stuck. That's another reason why I don't like it. It's just, if they had some flexibility, then it's like, okay, we can try and maneuver some things. But they strangle-held themselves with players that don't help them with what they need. That's what they did. It's like, and I know they got basketball people at the top of that thing. Jerry West is at the top of that thing. So I just don't know what they're doing. I could help. I really, call me crazy, but BDF 44 could help the Clippers. I could help them. Because what they need to do is let go of the idea that they can win a championship with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They cannot. They can't. It's not because of the fit. It ain't got nothing to do with basketball. It's because of their price tags, y'all. It's because Kawhi's on a super max or a max contract, and so is Paul George. And again, you didn't do a good job of putting players around them that have value and make sense for what it is that they do. That's what it is. You can do Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You just need to build better around them. You definitely don't give Marcus Morris a third of the cap. You definitely don't give the other third to Bledsoe. You definitely, like you see what I'm saying? It's how you build. It's how you build, and it's understanding what will make it so that the pieces on your team can provide the value that their contracts represent. Not every contract is just a bad contract, period, let's look away. No, those are bad contracts because they don't have that facilitator that I've been just talking about for the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's why those contracts suck. You surround yourself with nothing but catch and shoot players and you don't give them a point guard, they're all going to be useless. All of them. They're going to look bad out there. There's not going to be no cohesive basketball. The big names are not going to help you, and they're not going to help each other. It's not in the nature to. You absolutely and utterly need certain things on this basketball floor. Rim protection, depth, shooters, passers. If you don't have all of those pieces, it's like having a bike without wheels. You're not going to move. I don't care how much money you poured into the rest of the bike. You don't have what it takes to make it work. And the Clippers don't have what it takes to make it work. And that's their problem. And what makes it worse is that from where I'm sitting, unless they get extremely creative or get some good luck, they ain't going to find it. It's just hopeless. They have no picks. It's just a lost season. So go out there, struggle, stay healthy, And hopefully your GM can get you some facilitation, because that's honestly the reality of the situation. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, they can overcome a lot of things and have, and we've seen that. But without Kawhi Leonard, there's nothing to say. They're just going to have to go out there and just run. Just run. That's it. Like, literally, that's it. Go run. That's what the Clippers organization is telling those players. Go run. Because we know you ain't going to win no championship, and we know we don't have any picks to make this make any sense, or to make your efforts, in failing, be rewarding. So if you guys miss the playoffs, it means nothing. If you make the playoffs, hooray. I don't like these type of situations. What you want me to do? I don't. My name is BDF44. I hate to be pessimistic, Clipper fans. Obviously, I'm a Laker fan, but that's not even the mindset I'm thinking in. I'm just frustrated with what I see, because it's just like, that is not a situation that basketball players can enjoy, based on not the environment, not the coaching staff. All that's great. They're doing great in LA. Everybody's happy. But once you get on the basketball floor, can we run plays? Can we run cohesive plays? Can we get quality possessions? And the answer is probably not. My name is BDL44. Thank y'all for watching. I'm out.